The primary interest of Italy's economic geopolitics is to maintain the growth of its export-driven economic industrial model, particularly on the extra-European front. Two multiplier strategies are needed in the current world shift. The first is to minimize or even avoid tariffs for exports to America. The second is to expand the range of bilateral collaborations/partnerships with relevant nations on the global stage. The government is certainly on this challenging path. Italy is the fourth largest exporter in the world, but it lacks a national strength scale equivalent and is constantly exposed to competitive pressures from France and Germany through their predominant influence via the EU and consequent regulations. But it's not impossible. The primary interest of Italy's economic geopolitics is to maintain the growth of its export-driven economic industrial model, particularly on the extra-European front. Two multiplier strategies are needed in the current world shift. The first is to minimize or even avoid tariffs for exports to America. The second is to expand the range of bilateral collaborations/partnerships with relevant nations on the global stage. The government is certainly on this challenging path. Italy is the fourth largest exporter in the world, but it lacks a national strength scale equivalent and is constantly exposed to competitive pressures from France and Germany through their predominant influence via the EU and consequent regulations. But it's not impossible. If you remove tariffs or barriers, I will do the same. This is a huge change. Simplifying, in the early 1960s, America, fearing difficulties in keeping allies together, decided on a strategy of asymmetric international trade with them and similar countries. They could export almost everything to America, but it did not demand reciprocity, offering them both protectionism, useful for internal consensus, and an enormous potential for wealth through exports. This created a semi-global market centered on American imports, which pushed allies to adopt an export-driven economic model. When a fully global market emerged after the Cold War, America did not want and, in any case, could not change this global model. It began to deindustrialize and had a huge trade deficit. In reality, this deficit was financially balanced by exporters transferring dollars into the U.S. financial system. But it was a false balance because this wealth did not prevent deindustrialization and the impoverishment of the middle class. Support for Trump stems from this situation. He promised to rebalance commercial flows substantively. However, the initial idea of using tariffs too much was realistically assessed by his staff as too dangerous for America. Therefore, he changed his vision, from asymmetric trade to symmetric trade via reciprocity. This means that the EU will have to abandon its many tariff and non-tariff barriers, as well as carbon taxes, etc., if it wants to avoid tariffs for exports to America. And perhaps it will have to review VAT, which America considers a barrier. It is too early to go into details, but I recommend seizing the opportunity for a European simplification that allows the smoothest possible Euro-American flows, eliminating European protectionism. How? Through negotiations that study maximum openness combined with the constraint of protecting some social categories, but trying to adapt the second to the first. Rome should lead the start of this process, also considering that Germany, more export-dependent than Italy, is likely to converge after the political elections. I'll stop here, urging the ability to understand compromise points at the EU level. Second multiplier strategy. Italy must become more global to create increasing spaces for its exports through bilateral agreements. It is doing well with African, Arab, and Pacific nations. It needs to expand its action more. But to do so in Africa and Central Asia, it needs a power umbrella that reduces the problem of small political and military scale. The EU cannot provide it, but America can. Therefore, while attempting to maintain dual loyalty to America and the EU, the main exchange is with America. Exchange? Washington has always demanded exchanges. Just like in the alliance centered on Athenian power from 462 to 404 BC, Athens offered protection with its fleet to allies in exchange for the custody of their treasury or equivalent non-monetary actions. Are there such exchanges for Rome with America? There are. And there are also many very productive ones with Japan, Australia, India, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Brazil, and many others, with attention to a deeper relationship with Israel and the Western Balkans. But will France and Germany let Italy run free? Tendentially no, but they also do not have an interest in compressing Italy, triggering a reaction under the American umbrella, which is also essential. But what does Italy need most to implement such an ambitious policy? More internal order and efficiency, not so much by suppressing the nonsense of the political minority, such as the suicidal proposal for a wealth tax, but by educating the majority's personnel to govern with maximum precision, efficiency, and cohesion. Even more so, like a maritime republic prepared for all oceans and continents, as well as the space above them and beyond. Read on www.carloplanda.com.